You're not loud about it. You don't panic about it. You don't post about it on Facebook. But it's there, that quiet thought, late at night, when the house is silent and your brain suddenly whispers, "What if I run out?" Gen X doesn't talk about this. You were raised to handle it, figure it out. Don't complain, don't ask for help, just keep moving. But retirement isn't something you figure out. Retirement is something that compounds, and fear compounds too. My name is Frank, and I spend an unhealthy amount of time studying retirement math, broken systems, and the fears people don't admit out loud. And if you're anywhere near retirement age, subscribe right now. Because most retirement channels sell comfort. They tell you what you want to hear. I tell you what the math is going to do to you if you don't prepare. And if you don't subscribe, you're basically trusting your retirement plan to hope. And hope is not a strategy. Let's talk about the silent retirement fear of Gen X. Not the Instagram version, the real one. Because the truth is, Gen X doesn't fear retirement. Gen X fears being trapped. Here's the first silent fear, and it's the one nobody wants to say out loud. Outliving your money. You don't fear dying early, you fear living too long. That sounds dark, but it's reality, because living too long is expensive, and Gen X knows this. You've already lived through the dot-com crash, the 2008 collapse, COVID, inflation, layoffs, wage stagnation, housing insanity. You're not naive. You don't trust the future. You've seen the future break multiple times. So when someone says, just save $1 million and you'll be fine, Gen X hears, just hope the world stays stable for 30 years. And Gen X knows better. Now let's put numbers on this. If you retire at 62 and live until 90, that's 28 years. If you retire at 65 and live until 92, that's 27 years. If you retire at 60 and live until 95, that's 35 years. That's not a retirement, that's a second lifetime. 30 years without a paycheck, 30 years of bills, 30 years of inflation, 30 years of random disasters. Now here's where the math gets uncomfortable. Let's say you need $60,000 per year to live. That sounds normal. That's not luxury. That's groceries, utilities, insurance, gas, basic travel, basic life. $60,000 per year. Over 30 years, that's $1.8 million. That number shocks people because most people don't think in decades, they think in months. But retirement is decades. Now here's the part that hits even harder. That $60,000 doesn't stay $60,000. Inflation doesn't care about your budget. At 3% inflation, $60,000 becomes about $108,000 by year 30. So the lifestyle you think is normal today becomes a lifestyle you can't afford later. And that's why the fear exists. It's not because Gen X is weak, it's because Gen X is realistic. Gen X doesn't fear the numbers, Gen X fears the timeline, because the timeline is long and the margin for error is small. Now fear number 2, and this one is personal, Social Security. This is where Gen X gets quiet, because Gen X doesn't trust promises. You've heard the headlines, Social Security is running out, trust fund depletion, cuts may be coming, 2033, 2034. And no matter what the truth is, uncertainty creates anxiety. Because if you're 55, 58, 61, Social Security isn't a bonus, it's a foundation. And when the foundation feels shaky, everything feels shaky. Now here's the math nobody explains clearly. If your full retirement age benefit is $2,400 per month at 67 and you claim at 62, you're not getting $2,400. You're getting about $1,680. That's a 30% cut. Permanent, not temporary, permanent. That's $720 less every month. That's $8,640 less every year. And over 25 years, that's $216,000. And that's assuming the system stays stable. So Gen X doesn't fear Social Security because they're paranoid. They fear it because they've watched every system get adjusted when it's convenient.
And here's what makes this fear worse. Social Security is the one income stream people think is safe. So when that feels uncertain, the brain goes into survival mode. And Gen X lives in survival mode. You don't even realize it. It's your default setting. Now, fear number 3, and this is the one that ruins people. Healthcare. This is the silent killer, not because it's scary, because it's unpredictable. And Gen X hates unpredictable. You can budget for groceries, you can budget for utilities, you can budget for property taxes, but you cannot budget for a stroke. You cannot budget for cancer. You cannot budget for dementia. You cannot budget for a spouse falling and breaking a hip. And you definitely cannot budget for long-term care. Here's what people don't understand. Healthcare isn't just a retirement expense, it's a retirement ambush, because one medical event can wipe out 10 years of careful planning. Now let's talk numbers. A private room in a nursing home can cost around $8,000 to $12,000 per month. That's $96,000 to $120,000 per year. That's not extra spending, that's a second mortgage, and it can last years. Now add prescriptions, add Medicare premiums, add dental, add hearing, add vision, add surgery, add physical therapy, and suddenly retirement becomes less about freedom and more about survival. This is the fear Gen X doesn't admit, because Gen X doesn't want to be a burden. You don't want your kids to take care of you. You don't want to move in with anyone. You don't want to ask for help. You don't want to be the problem. Gen X wants independence. That's your pride. That's your identity. And healthcare is the one thing that threatens independence. That's why it keeps people awake, because you're not scared of dying. You're scared of losing control. Now, fear number 4. And this one is pure math, but it feels like bad luck. The market crash fear. A lot of people don't even know the name for this, but it has a name. Sequence of returns risk. Sounds fancy, but the concept is simple. It means this: if the market crashes early in retirement, you can run out of money even if the market recovers later, because you're withdrawing while the portfolio is down. Let's make it painfully clear. Imagine you retire with $800,000. You start withdrawing $40,000 per year. That's 5%. Now imagine the market drops 25% in year 1. Your $800,000 becomes $600,000, but you still need your $40,000. So now your withdrawal isn't 5%, it's closer to 6.7%. That's not a small difference. That's the difference between stability and collapse, because now your money has to grow faster just to survive. And here's the terrifying part. Most people retire right before the crash, because they retire based on emotions. They retire when they're exhausted. They retire when they can't do it anymore. They retire when the job becomes unbearable. And that's exactly when the market decides to punch them in the mouth. That's why Gen X fears retirement, because you've seen timing ruin people. You watched it happen in 2008. You watched retirement accounts get cut in half. You watched people forced to back to work. You watched people lose their homes. And your brain remembers, even if you don't talk about it.
Now, fear number 5, and this is the deepest one, the one nobody admits, the fear of being embarrassed. Gen X doesn't fear poverty the way other generations do. Gen X fears humiliation, because you were raised with one message: handle your own life. Don't be a burden. Don't ask for help. So the nightmare isn't just running out of money. The nightmare is running out of money and everyone finding out. Having to sell the house, having to move, having to downgrade, having to tell your kids, hey, I need help. Gen X would rather suffer quietly than ask for help. That's why this fear stays silent, because you don't want sympathy, you want control. And here's the part where people start to feel something in their chest, because all of these fears combine into one big thought, a thought Gen X never says out loud. You did everything right, and you still don't feel safe. That's the silent retirement fear. Not because you didn't save, not because you didn't work, not because you didn't plan, but because the world changed, and it keeps changing.
And retirement planning assumes stability, but Gen X lived through instability. So your fear isn't irrational, your fear is earned. Now let's talk about the truth. Most retirement anxiety is not about numbers, it's about uncertainty. If you knew your money would last, you wouldn't be scared. If you knew healthcare wouldn't wipe you out, you wouldn't be scared. If you knew Social Security would stay stable, you wouldn't be scared. If you knew inflation wouldn't eat your life, you wouldn't be scared. But you don't know. And that unknown is what creates the quiet fear. So the solution isn't motivation. The solution isn't optimism. The solution is clarity. Because once you have clarity, the fear shrinks. Not because the future becomes perfect, but because you finally understand the rules. Now here's the part most people skip, but this is where Gen X wins. Gen X has something boomers didn't. Gen X has skepticism. Gen X has survival instincts. Gen X has adaptability. Boomers retired expecting the world to stay the same. Gen X retires expecting the world to betray them. And honestly, that mindset is an advantage, because it makes you plan for reality, not fantasy. But you still need numbers, so here's what you should actually measure, not guess. Measure. Number 1, what is your annual spending? Not your hopeful spending, your real spending. If you spend $4,500 per month, that's $54,000 per year. If you spend $6,000 per month, that's $72,000 per year. This number matters more than your portfolio, because retirement isn't about how much you have, it's about how long it lasts. Number 2, what is your guaranteed income? Social Security, pension if you have one, annuity if you bought one, rental income, anything that arrives even if the market crashes. That number determines how much pressure your investments carry. Number 3, healthcare risk. This is the big one, because if you don't account for it, your entire retirement plan is a fantasy, and Gen X doesn't do fantasy. Number 4, withdrawal rate, because the difference between 3% and 5% isn't 2%. It's the difference between money lasting 35 years or dying in 18. And yes, that's how brutal it can be. Now let's do a reality scenario. Let's say you're Gen X, you have $650,000 saved. You're thinking about retiring. You'll get $2,000 per month from Social Security. That's $24,000 per year. Now you want $60,000 lifestyle. That means your investments need to provide $36,000 per year. 36,000 divided by 650,000 is about 5.5%. That's aggressive. That's risky. And that's the part people don't see. They think, I have over $500,000, I'm good. But the withdrawal rate tells the truth. Now, if inflation hits, where healthcare spikes, where the market drops early, that 5.5% becomes 7%, then 9%. Then you're not retired anymore, you're just unemployed. And that's the nightmare. That's what Gen X fears. Not retirement, but fake retirement. The kind where you quit working, then the money forces you back. Now let me say something that sounds harsh, but it's real. Gen X retirement isn't about comfort, it's about avoiding catastrophe. And the silent fear you carry isn't weakness, it's your brain doing its job. It's warning you. Because you're not scared of retirement, you're scared of being trapped in it. So here's what I want you to remember. The silent retirement fear of Gen X is this. You don't trust the system, and you don't trust the math, because you don't fully understand the math yet. But once you understand it, you stop feeling powerless. And when Gen X stops feeling powerless, they become dangerous, in a good way. Now here's what we're doing next, because this is a roadmap, and we're not guessing. In the next video, we're exposing the real retirement killer nobody talks about, healthcare. Because one medical event can destroy decades of planning. And if you understand that risk, you can build a plan that survives it. And after that, we're going to break down the brutal Social Security decision. 62 versus 67, side by side, real numbers, no fluff, no comfort math. Because Gen X doesn't need motivation, you need precision. Subscribe, because the silent retirement fear doesn't disappear by ignoring it.
It disappears when you understand what's coming and you plan like someone who's already survived worse. I'll see you in the next one.